So a very good morning to all of you. So the topic for today's tutorial is dummy, fetus dummy and the pelvis, bony pelvis. So first let us discuss about why do you need to learn about the basics of this bony pelvis of the mother and the fetal skull also, right? So we are going to discuss some few basic points which are expected from an undergraduate student of OBGY, right? About the female bony pelvis and the fetal skull, right? Now coming to uh, this female pelvis, right? Now it consists of, it is also called as innominate bone. It consists of two iliac bones, right? It has four bones and four joints, right? So what are the four bones? Two iliac or innominate bones, one sacrum, and then there is a coccyx here, right? So four bones. Now what are the four joints? Symphysis pubis, this is one joint, sacrococcygeal joint here, right? And then there are two sacroiliac joints here, right? So two sacroiliac joints, one symphysis pubis and one sacroiliac joint. So four bones and four joints, you must remember. Now coming to, for obstetric point of view, this pelvis is important to us because it is the passage through which the presenting part of the fetus has to negotiate to come out of the introitus, right? So that is how this whole mechanics of labor depends upon the different sizes, shapes, and diameters of this pelvic cavity, and through this the fetus has to pass, right? So that is the purpose of understanding why the different levels of pelvis and the different inlet and outlet and all those things, right? Now this pelvis is further divided into something called as a false pelvis, which is above here, and a true pelvis inside this, right? So what do you mean by false pelvis? False pelvis is a pelvis which is above this pelvic brim. This is called as pelvic brim, where the actual cavity starts, right? So this is a pelvic brim. So above this, so when the woman is standing in front of you, the pelvis which you see actually externally is the false pelvis, right? So it is guarded up anteriorly by the abdominal wall. Here is the abdominal wall, laterally by two iliac fossa, iliac crests and iliac fossa, and posteriorly by the maternal spine, right? So now this false pelvis is called false because the fetus doesn't have to really negotiate this broad cavity. So it is called false pelvis, right? So it appears like pelvis, but actually the pelvis, bony pelvis cavity is here. So this is called as the true pelvis. Now the part of pelvis which is above the pelvic brim is called as false pelvis. And the part of the pelvis below the pelvic brim right up to the outlet is called true pelvis. Right? Now whatever discussion, whatever we are going to learn henceforth after this false pelvis and true pelvis division is about true pelvis. Right? Now true pelvis is further divided into an inlet, an outlet, and inside cavity. Just imagine you are an obstetrician and the woman is lying in front of you in labor room. She would be lying in front of you like this. Her both, this is the vulval outlet. Are you getting it? And she's going to be in lithotomy position here, like this, isn't it? In lithotomy position. So right, so this what you see when you are standing in front of the patient is the outlet, right? When the patient is standing, she's standing like this. Give it a little forward tilt. It does. The pelvis is not like this. When any woman is standing, the pelvis is not straight like this. It has a little forward inclination. This is the forward inclination of pelvis, which is important. And at the same time, how do you know that there is a forward inclination? It doesn't make a 90-degree with the floor. It makes around an angle of 55 degree or so with the ground, right? Now, so this is the concept of the inlet, so through which the baby enters first. Then this is the cavity, And when the woman is lying in front of you in labor room, this will appear like this, right? So this is going to be the outlet from where there is going to be vulval introitus here. So from here the baby is going to come out. To show you exactly, the fetus will enter from inlet and it will come out of outlet like this, right? Now what is an inlet? Now if I decide, then I can divide this cavity of pelvis, the true pelvis, into n number of planes. I can divide it into 10, 20 number of planes. But the number of or the level of planes or the cut sections of this pelvis are the levels are 3 or 4 levels are very important as far as mechanics of normal labor is concerned. So you have 3 main planes. There is a plane of inlet at the brim only. The brim, I will tell you what the landmarks of the brim are. So this brim, which actually divides it into falls and true pelvis. Then there is a outlet, which is seen from here. So there are, this pubic rami, and then there are ischial tuberosities, and then there is a coccyx here, right? So this is an outlet, and inside this, between this inlet and this outlet is the mid cavity, to where all the space is least and the internal rotation of head and all those things happen in the mid cavity. So the true pelvis is further divided uh, into inlet, mid cavity, and the outlet. Now inlet is this, right? Now what are the boundaries of inlet, or what are the landmarks of inlet? This is a favorite question, which the examiner might ask you, because you will have just a 10 minutes for each student and you have to answer right from drugs to everything, right, on the table viva. So he might ask you just enumerate the landmarks of inlet. So you all should be aware of the landmarks of inlet. So what are the landmarks? Anterior to posterior. So anteriorly it starts with symphysis pubis, pubic crest, pubic tubercle, right? Pubic ramus, iliopectineal eminence here, right? Iliopectineal line here, right? This is the sacroiliac joint here, which is going like this. This is the ala of sacrum, and this is the sacral promontory. So we'll revise again. From anterior to posterior, there is symphysis pubis, then there is a pubic crest. It's a kind of ridge. Then there is a pubic tubercle here. Then the ramus. Then the iliopubic eminence here. Then pectineal line. Iliopectineal eminence, I'm sorry. Then iliopectineal line. Then the sacroiliac joint. Then the ala of sacrum, and then the sacral promontory. And the same thing on the opposite side. So these are the landmarks of the pelvic inlet. Right? Now, each uh, level of plane, that is the inlet, the outlet, and the mid cavity, has different diameters, right? So let us first see the landmarks of outlet. So inlet was a circular cavity which was transversely oval. That means the transverse diameter is more than the vertical diameter. So it's a transversely oval cavity. Then mid cavity, inside this you will see at the level of ischial spines. These are the ischial spines, right? This one. It is almost circular in shape. And if you see the outlet, it has one triangle like area here and another triangle like area here. So it is diamond shaped. So if I join an imaginary line over here like this, it will become a diamond shape. Ye above there is going to be 2 lines, and here if I join it with the coccyx, it is going to cause another triangle with a base common, which is at the level of 2 ischial tuberosities. So ultimately it becomes a diamond shaped area. So inlet is transversely circular, cavity is circular, and the outlet is diamond shaped. Now every plane of this pelvis has got different diameters. So the diameter, these are all imaginary lines which are being drawn to measure the measure the different diameters will help us to know whether this pelvis is going to be adequate for this kind of fetus or not, and is she going to have a favorable labor outcome or not. Right? Now coming to first level is, as we said, it is plane of inlet. Right? So in plane of inlet, there is going to be one anterior-posterior diameter, anterior anterior to posterior diameter, and then one transverse diameter and one oblique, two oblique diameters. Right? Now, why there are so many diameters? Now, transverse diameter is going to be definitely more than the AP diameter because it is transversely oval, right? So inlet is always transversely oval. So it is like this. So between the two farthest points on the inlet, the line joining these two is going to be the transverse diameter, right? The line which joins the superior border, the midpoint of superior border of symphysis pubis to midpoint of sacral promontory is going to be the anterior-posterior diameter, right? And then it is the oblique diameter. So the line joining one sacroiliac joint midpoint here to the iliopubic eminence here is going to be iliopectineal eminence here is going to be oblique diameter, right? So now just imagine this oblique diameter is coming from this right side and going to this left side, right? And this oblique diameter is going from this side of sacroiliac joint and going to the opposite side of the this thing. So which one is right and which one is left, isn't it? Because they are going from right to left or left to right. So you have to say that according to the sacroiliac joint side. So if the diameter is going from right sacroiliac joint to left iliopubic eminence, it's going to be right oblique diameter, right? Even if it is going to the left side of the iliopectineal eminence. Are you getting it? So it is always the side of the sacroiliac joint which decides the whether it is right or left oblique diameter of inlet. Right, so inlet is again, as I said, has three diameters: AP, transverse, and oblique. Oblique will be as per the side of the oblique diameter will be as per the side of the sacroiliac joint. Right. So now the next question is, how are you going to measure these diameters? So clinically, inlet is not actually available to us for clinical assessment because it is at the level of higher in the pelvis. So in clinical pelvimetry, we assess these diameters, which we will learn after this, by doing internal examination, by doing PV examination, right? So first we learned about the inlet and its diameters, AP, transverse, and oblique. They are generally around, they are 11 centimeter, 12 centimeter, 13 centimeter if the lady is huge, but otherwise 10.5, 11, 10.5, 11.5, and 12.5. So the largest is transverse diameter. So it's going to be 13.5 here, right? Or 12.5 here, sorry. Then oblique is going to be 11.5 and AP is going to be 10.5 for inlet, right? Then coming to mid cavity. Mid cavity is the circular area in the pelvis at the level of ischial spines here, right? So ischial spine, if we do PV examination, and the vagina is, a cylindrical cavity here, vulval outlet is going to be somewhere here. So ischial spines are going to be midway in the vagina laterally, right? Okay. So these ischial spines, when you do PV examinations, you will find that they feel as laterally there is nothing here. So laterally only one bony prominence is felt on both sides, that is ischial spine. So that level is called as the plane of mid cavity, right? Or plane of least pelvic dimensions. Okay, so this is plane of cavity, which is circular and the diameter is around 10.5 to 11 centimeters, right? Then coming to outlet. Now outlet, as we know, is diamond shaped with one triangle here with and another two sides here out of four sides of the diamond shaped area, right? And this angle which two pubic rami make is called as ischiopubic rami make, that it is called as subpubic angle. This subpubic angle, see how wide it is. In males, this subpubic angle is narrow, right? If subpubic angle is wide, then only this fetus can negotiate and come out of pelvis. If subpubic angle is narrow, it will get obstructed in the outlet. So this subpubic angle is always more than 90 degree in females, right? So outlet parameters are, this AP diameter will be from here to here, right? And the transverse diameter is going to be between two ischial tuberosities by tuberous diameter. Okay, so these are all few basics of the anterior, posterior, and all those diameters of different types, different parts of pelvis. Now, clinically, then coming to, so first we learned about the inlet, this brim and its landmarks, that is symphysis pubis, pubic crest, pubic tubercle, and all this till the end, right? Till the sacral promontory. Then we learned about this inside cavity, right, which is circular in shape. Then we learned about the outlet. Now this cavity is the least available space for the fetus to negotiate, and it is at this stage, or it is at this place, the internal rotation must happen of the fetus, and if it doesn't happen, there can be obstructed labor. So now this cavity is again divided into two planes, plane of greatest pelvic dimension, plane of least pelvic dimension. As the name says, greatest pelvic dimension, it is little larger than the least pelvic dimension. So plane of inlet, plane of greatest pelvic dimension, plane of least pelvic dimension, then outlet, right? Now, what are these greatest pelvic dimension and least pelvic dimension? So greatest pelvic dimension plane is the plane of mid cavity, which passes from the midpoint of the symphysis pubis, and then it divides this foramen into upper obturator foramen into upper 1/4 and lower 4/5, and then it passes between the second and third sacral vertebra here, right? Now this is the plane of greatest pelvic dimension. The greatest pelvic dimension plane decides whether the pelvis is adequate, it is gynecoid or not. Now coming to one plane below that, it is called as plane of least pelvic dimensions. So plane of least pelvic dimension is almost, it passes from the lower border of symphysis pubis or just above that, laterally through the ischial spines here, right? These ischial spines, and then posteriorly through the this. Can you see this? This this is called as sacrosciatic notch. So it passes through this, right? And then posteriorly in the fourth, fifth sacral vertebra, right? So this is the plane which is the least space available for the fetus, and here the internal rotation must happen at the level of ischial spines, right? So plane of least pelvic dimension is the most important plane for the fetus to negotiate, right? Now coming to how do you do clinical pelvimetry? That means how will you assess that this pelvis is adequate, it's gynecoid or not? So what do you do? So say you are doing clinical pelvimetry, you are going to tell the patient, it is done at term. So at around 37 weeks, 36 weeks, you just see whether the baby is well grown or not, and then you are going to assess the pelvis, right? So by assessing pelvis, we are just assessing whether this pelvis is gynecoid or not, right? Now, CPD is a totally different term, right? When we assess pelvis, we want to see whether it is, it's an absolute term. Means what? That you just want to say whether this pelvis is gynecoid or not. But whether this pelvis, in spite of being a gynecoid, can be inadequate for a 3.5 kg baby or a 4 kg baby. So then it becomes a cephalopelvic disproportion, right? So that has to be assessed just before labor, or when the patient actually goes in labor, or maybe at 39, 40 weeks when the baby is completely grown, or at the time of labor. Now coming to the actual assessment of pelvis, we have to assess all these planes, whether the planes are adequate or not. So as I told you, there is an inlet, there is a mid cavity, and there is an outlet. Now inlet, as I said, is a transversely oval cavity. The mid cavity, that is the greatest pelvic dimension and least pelvic dimension, is a circular cavity, and the outlet is diamond shaped, right? Now, if you see characteristically, inlet being transversely oval, the AP diameter is least. The AP diameter of inlet is the least diameter at the level of inlet. At outlet, the AP diameter is quite long from here to here. It is an arc-like diameter, right? So what is small? The transverse diameter is small in the outlet. And in cavity, it is the plane of least pelvic dimension which is smallest, right? So by doing clinical pelvimetry, basically you are going to assess these three or four important diameters by doing PV examination. Now, when you do PV examination, you must see the anterior-posterior diameter of inlet, the mid cavity. You are going to see the distance between two ischial spines. In the outlet, you are going to see subpubic angle, right? This angle, subpubic angle, and then the intertuberous diameter. And throughout the pelvis, you must see whether the lateral vaginal walls are parallel or not. They should not be converging like this. So this is what you want to assess in clinical pelvimetry. So what do? You tell the patient, she is around 36, 37 weeks. You tell the patient to go and pass urine, and then with a lubricated hand, under all aseptic precautions, you are going to do PV. So she is lying down in dorsal lithotomy position, and you are going to do a per vaginum examination. So when you start doing per vaginum examination, see the AP diameter of inlet is from here to here, but you cannot measure this diameter because this will not be accessible to you. This body part is not going to be accessible to you. What is accessible to you by vaginally? You can access this distance. So you are going to do something like this. So this distance. So this is called as diagonal conjugate, right? That means by doing PV examination, the lower border of symphysis pubis, you want to reach the midpoint of sacral promontory. By doing this, you are actually wanting to assess this AP diameter, right? So what is happening? This extra distance you have taken from here to here. You wanted this, but you took from here because this part is not accessible, right? So you are going to clinically do it like this. So this is called as diagonal conjugate, right? Now this inlet AP diameter is actually from here to here. So this is called as true conjugate. So diagonal conjugate, which is clinically seen, is always larger than true conjugate, right? True conjugate is the midpoint distance between the midpoint of superior border of symphysis pubis to the midpoint of sacral promontory. And actually you cannot assess this. Then what are you assessing? You are doing diagonal conjugate by PV examination, right? So you are going to put fingers here and you are going to try to reach the sacral promontory, right? And then calculate that distance, right? Now there is one more diameter that is called as AP diameter of inlet. That is one I told you about true conjugate. Then we learnt about the diagonal conjugate. So when you're doing PV, and then there is something called as obstetric conjugate. So what is obstetric conjugate? Obstetric conjugate is the distance between this is the inner surface of symphysis pubis, right? So from the midpoint of inner surface of symphysis pubis, the diameter which goes to sacral promontory is called as obstetric conjugate. So now for inlet, you have three conjugates. For inlet AP diameter assessment, you have three conjugates. They're called as conjugates, these diameters. One is the true conjugate, that is actually at the level of inlet. Then the one which is assessed clinically, that is the diagonal conjugate. And the one which is important for the fetus, because actually the space which is available for the fetus with soft tissues coming here is the obstetric conjugate. Now why all these three are given? True is given because actually it is that level where the diameter should be taken. Diagonal is given because diagonal is the way you are going to assess it. And why obstetric is important? Because it is that diameter which is actually going to be available for the fetus. So by clinically assessing the inlet of pelvis, you are just calculating diagonal conjugate, and if you minus 2.5 centimeter from that diagonal conjugate which you measured, then you are going to minus 2.5 and you will get the obstetric conjugate. So obstetric conjugate is nothing but the AP diameter of the inlet, right? So first thing which we saw is assessment of inlet by clinical pelvimetry. Now how do you assess the mid cavity? Mid cavity is assessed at the level of ischial spines. So when you do PV examinations, you are going to see the lateral vaginal walls. You know, the lateral vaginal walls are parallel or not, or they are converging like this. No, the lateral vaginal wall should be like this. They should be parallel like this, or they should be divergent like this when you do PV examination, right? So if they are converging like this on both sides, then maybe she has a contracted pelvis, right? And when you do PV, you are going to do it like this. This is the vaginal wall. I'm going to feel for this ischial spine through this vaginal wall. They should not be very easily palpable laterally in the vagina, right? If they are both palpable very easily and they are protruding inside the vaginal walls, then it could be a contracted pelvis. So at given point, you should not be able to reach both the ischial spines together, right? So coming to the outlet. So at the level of mid cavity, you are going to see the lateral pelvic walls, and at the level of the and the ischial spine. So that will assess your mid cavity. Now outlet, how do you assess? You are going to measure this subcubic angle. This subcubic angle should be more than 90 degree. And at the same time, then you remove your hand outside and you are going to, so once PV is done, you took first diagonal conjugate, then you saw whether the lateral vaginal walls are parallel or not, then you felt for these ischial spines on both sides, then the subcubic angle, then you remove your hand outside the introitus and then you're going to see the intertuberous diameter. For that, your four knuckles should fit on the gluteal area. Here the buttocks of the patient will start, right? So here these ischial tuberosities are felt as bony prominences in the buttocks of patient. So if you put your hand like this, right, your four knuckles should fit between two ischial tuberosities. Then you can say that there is adequate space even in the outlet, and this angle has to be wide. So I think clinically we have understood now today how we do the clinical pelvimetry. In exams, just remember that there are four bones, four joints, true pelvis, false pelvis. In true pelvis, plane of inlet, plane of mid cavity, plane of outlet. In mid cavity, you have a plane of greatest pelvic dimension, which will tell you whether this pelvis is gynecoid or not. And plane of least pelvic dimension is the least space available to the uh, fetus to undergo internal rotation. And the last one is plane of outlet. In the outlet, subcubic rami, a subcubic angle, and the intertuberous diameter has to be assessed, right? Now, in short, about the fetal skull. Now, this is a typical fetal skull, right? If you can see it properly, this is a typical fetal skull. It has got few landmarks which everybody should be able to describe. So, this is the sagittal suture, this is the coronal suture, this is the bregma or the antenatal fontanelle, then this is the sagittal suture continuing behind, then this is called as the Y-shaped lambdoid suture. So occipital bone, parietal bones, and the frontal bones. So two frontal bones, two parietal bones, and one occipital bone. So these are the bones of the fetus. And then there is a posterior fontanelle here, and then there is an anterior fontanelle. This fontanelle is closed at birth only, and this closes after 1.5 years after birth. Right now, the different diameters of engagement are, right? So in a vortex, what is a vortex? Vortex is this quadrangular area. This is the presenting part. So this quadrangular area, right? Which, so if the patient is in a flexed attitude, the fetus is in flexed attitude, this is the area which is going to hit the pelvic floor first. So this is called as vertex. So vertex is nothing but the area bounded anteriorly by the coronal suture, posteriorly by the lambdoid suture, and laterally an imaginary line joining these two sutures passing through the parietal eminences. So this quadrangular area is called as the vertex, right? And uh, this is about vertex presentation. Now this is going to be like face presentation here, right? So depending upon the presentation or the presenting part on the cephalic presentation, there are going to be different diameters of engagement of fetal head. So for vertex presentation, it is called as suboccipito. If I hold it like this, it is suboccipito bregmatic. If it is a deflexed head, it's going to be mento vertical. So all these things are discussed in the next session on dummy and pelvis. But you all should be knowing the basics of this much about the dummy and pelvis, the different landmarks on the dummy and pelvis. I'll just share the screen and we'll quickly go through the slides, right? So this is the uh, typical bony pelvis. Now these are the landmarks on the bony pelvis. As we discussed, I have a few good slides ahead. I'll just tell you, right? So these are the diameters of inlet, right? Then fixed points on the pelvic brim, symphysis pubis, superior ramus of pubis, iliopectineal eminence, and iliopectineal line, sacroiliac joint, aloe sacrum, sacral promontory are the landmarks, right? So these are the planes which we were discussing about. So this is the plane of inlet. So if you take a sagittal section of female pelvis, it's going to be the plane of inlet. This is going to be plane of greatest pelvic dimension at S2 and S3 level, and then plane of least pelvic dimension, then the anatomical outlet, right? So these are the three conjugates which I was telling you. So just have a look at this. So this is the true conjugate. You know how I used to remember T, O, and D, Todd, right? So true conjugate is from the superior border to the sacral promontory. Then diagonal conjugate is from the lower border, which we clinically assess, right? And actually, what you want to find out is the obstetric conjugate, because that is the actual area which is available for the fetus to negotiate. So these are nothing but the AP diameters of the inlet. So AP diameter of inlet, right? So this is the AP diameter of the mid pelvis. It is at the level of ischial spines. Here it is going through ischial spines here, right? Now coming to, these are the diameters which are given for the brim, cavity and outlet. As you can see, at the level of brim or inlet, it is the transverse, because it is transversely oval, it is going to have a larger diameter as transverse. In cavity, almost everything is same. And in AP, in outlet, as I said, the anterior diameter is going to be the highest. So while doing clinical pelvimetry, we assess the least diameters of all these three levels. So for brim, we are going to assess the AP diameter. For cavity, we are going to assess the lateral walls and the bispinous diameter, and for outlet, we are going to assess the bituberous diameter, intertuberous diameter, right? So this is about the pelvis, right? Now coming to the few slides about I wanted to show you. This is a typical gynecoid pelvis. This is a typical, there are different types of pelvis depending upon the shape of the different levels, right? So this is these are all abnormalities of pelvis, which is generally not asked in exam as such. This is the difference between both male and female pelvis. Uh, this is what I wanted to show you. So this is a typical broad gynecoid pelvis. This is an anthropoid pelvis, and this is an anthroid pelvis. These two are favorable female pelvises. This pelvis is not very favorable for normal labor. So android pelvis is more like male, so it is not favorable for normal labor. Right? Now coming to the station. This station part I had already taught you. At the level of ischial spines, it is when the head enters. It is when I'll take normal labor. We'll discuss about this in the next class. So at the level of ischial spine, when the head reaches, it is called as station 0. Right? Now, this is what I wanted to show you. So these are the fetal skull landmarks. So frontal suture, coronal suture, bregma or anterior fontanelle. Then this is the posterior fontanelle. These are two parietal bones. So this area is called as vertex, which is the commonest presenting part in cephalic presentation, and this is again the different diameters of different presenting parts. So suboccipitobregmatic. Suboccipitobregmatic is for vertex presentation. That is the commonest presentation, and that is the diameter of the vertex presentation. So in exams, it will be asked to you what is the diameter of engagement. There are two types of diameters of engagement. One is diameter of engagement for fetal head. So for vertex, it is suboccipitobregmatic. And another is in which diameter of the pelvic inlet it engages. Okay, so that we'll see when we discuss about normal labor. So I think I was clear about basics of little bit about pelvis, bony pelvis, and the fetal skull. So next time we'll learn about normal labor. Thank you so much.